Please welcome Group CEO of Awaze, Henrik Kjellberg, and the founder and CEO of UnderTheDoormat Group, Merilee Karr, in discussion with Skift Senior Research Analyst, Pranavi Agarwal.
Hey everyone, hope you had a good break, got some coffee, and thanks for attending what I think is going to be an absolutely fascinating discussion about the short-term rental industry. And yeah, really delighted to have two leaders, two CEOs join me on stage. So Henrik, he is the CEO of Awaze. For those of you in the audience who don't know what Awaze is, you will by the end of the session. But Awaze is one of the largest professional managers of vacation rental properties in Europe through brands such as Host Seasons, Novasol, and Cottages.com.
We're the largest. Not
okay,
one
the
of.
largest.
Thank you.
So welcome, and also welcome Merilee, who is the CEO of UnderTheDoormat, which is a manager of luxury home accommodations in London, and she is also the chair of the UK Short-Term Association Accommodation. So yeah, welcome both, and please do submit your questions on the Q&A through the app. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic discussion, and yeah, I know you both have some very interesting thoughts on the industry as a whole, but let's kind of kick it off with a key trend that we're seeing post-COVID, and that's about blended travel, hybrid working, the rise of digital nomads. So maybe I'll start with you, Merilee. Is this phenomena, is this trend real? Are you seeing it kind of augment your financials in any meaningful way? How have you adapted your business model to kind of meet this new type of consumer demand?
Well, I think at an industry level, what we see is that business travel is returning. It's not back to the level that it was pre-pandemic. But actually, STR had some really good data which showed consumer trends pre and post-pandemic. And what we see is that short-term rentals are the category where consumer preferences have increased most. So an increase of 11% from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. And I think that's no surprise. Obviously, people now tested out short-term rentals and vacation rentals during the pandemic. And they've recognized that it's fantastic, not just for when they're going on a family vacation, but also when they're traveling for business. When you then start to see more combinations, because people can remote work and things like that, so business travel and leisure travel start to merge into one, then that type of accommodation provides that flexibility that people are looking for. So I think that's a trend that's here to stay. I don't think anyone is going to be 100% back in the office again. And with that flexibility comes opportunities. I think our sector is really well placed to capitalize on that.
And have you seen it kind of touch on your kind of top line in any way? Do you have kind of forecasts that it's specifically linked to kind of blended travel or digital nomads, or is it kind of, we're still kind of waiting to see how it kind of plays out?
Well, I mean, for us, the trusted stays element of the business is where we see that really playing out. So where we had all the professional operators in the industry coming together during COVID, we operated NHS homes and gave free stays to the NHS during the pandemic. And out of that came an opportunity for us to start selling to government. Fantastic, except government said, well, you must have clear standards, which we could demonstrate through our industry accreditation that we have with Quality in Tourism. But the second thing was they said, you have to bring all the industry players under one umbrella. We're not going to purchase from lots of different companies. So as the Short-Term Accommodation Association, we've aggregated everyone in our sector and created trusted stays. And what that has done for the first time is opened up the opportunity to access also the GDS. And so we did a big deal with Amadeus last year. And actually, I'm quite excited to announce, it's not even out in the press yet, but that Amadeus connection is now live. The first properties are now in there with institutional real estate in the form of Canary Wharf Group. So some pretty exciting stuff where you see the merging of institutional real estate, GDS, which is historically predominantly hotels, and the short-term rental sector. And all of that came because of COVID and things like Amadeus recognizing that business travelers wanted more choice. So, you know, from a business point of view, that's really exciting because, you know, creating those opportunities for the whole of the industry is something that will transform not just the short-term profitability of businesses in our sector, but actually give opportunities for future growth over the coming years.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you talk about the kind of tech-driven strategy that is taking place in the convergence of kind of hotels and short-term rentals. Perhaps I'll kind of direct the next question to you, Henrik. You know, one of the key trends that we have seen post-COVID is that, you know, more hotel brands are kind of launching their sub-brands into the vacation rental space, and more vacation rental companies are trying to attract corporate business travelers, leisure travelers. So to what extent do you see these two sectors, hotels, short-term rentals, at conflict with each other? Or is the convergence of these kind of two, the blending of these two industries, has that created a new type of accommodation offering which you guys can kind of tap into?
Yeah, I think it's funny when you talk to people who are come from different sectors of not travel. People think about like, well, there's loyalty and you have a certain, like, if I buy an Audi, I like Audi, or if it's Volkswagen, maybe Volkswagen. In travel, it's really about the trip type. So I, as a consumer, may have I'm super happy to go camping, ultra low scale, you know, on my own and kind of, you know, with no facilities. And I also really enjoy a hotel like this hotel. So I think the interesting and fascinating thing about travel is that you have the same consumer can really choose between a wide variety of things depending on the trip they're going to take. This transformation has been going on for a long time. I've been in the industry for almost 25 years, and I remember when there was a big difference between a chain hotel and a boutique hotel. So when I started working in accommodation with a former employer back in 2001, some of the boutique hotels had no internet. Just, you know, there was no internet. And of course, what's happened today is that people are very comfortable going between chain and boutique. And so I would just call it an accommodation continuum. And now people are equally happy to kind of throw into that mix, you know, a stay with one of our brands, a stay with, it could be Airbnb, it could be, you know, some of our competitors in the local market. And I think that really depends on the type of trip you're taking. So I think the trends have been going on for a long time. I think COVID was a big catalyst, a big boost, and you know, we're trying to make the most of it.
So we've seen the kind of blending of hotels and short-term rentals, and we've seen kind of more kinds of offerings such as apart hotels and kind of like a middle section come in. Could you perhaps quantify how much of that is part of your supply right now, maybe to both of you?
I mean, I'll quickly cover it. We do mostly leisure, so we don't, we try to stay away from city centers. It's not what we do well. We really try to focus on rural destinations and trying to take care of somebody's second home. That's our sweet spot, and then we have a great parks business as well, especially in the UK. So I'll sort of hand it over to Merilee, who may be doing more in the in the city space.
I mean, what we see is we work, for example, with Cadogan Estates, and we run apart hotels for them. We also work with Canary Wharf Group and run sort of a kind of hybrid residential and short-term rentals model with them in their build-to-rent space. So we see that kind of middle ground. But I think more importantly, again, looking at it from an industry perspective, we've seen over the past few years Accor acquiring One Fine Stay, Marriott Homes and Villas coming into the market. You know, there's always news about other hotel groups dabbling in the space. And I think what you also see, not just from the big hotel brands, but if you look at hotel owners and operators, they're all looking at different ways to mix their portfolio. So you see a lot of investment in hotel residences. You see investment in service departments. And so what I would say is there's this kind of muddled middle, which is neither hotels nor pure short-term rentals and individual properties, but all this in the middle. And what you are now seeing is operators that were born in the short-term rental space coming into that middle ground. There's always service department operators who've been around in that sort of space before, but you also see hotel operators coming into that sector as well. And I think, so from an investment point of view and even from an operational point of view, I think that's happening. I think the challenge that's still yet to be overcome is how that merging happens from a technology point of view. Because distribution and management of disparate properties versus buildings is a whole different tech architecture. And I don't think that has happened yet. And certainly we see that as a big opportunity from a Hesperia point of view. But I think that is where the technology has to be solved in order for the pure merging to happen and to really end up with companies that span the entire length of that sector.
But I think you see it as well. The Booking CTO was on previously saying, like, they're trying to give consumers what they want. So they were obviously at Booking looking for both hotels and other types of accommodation. And I agree with you on the technology point. Selling a treehouse is very different to selling a hotel room. It's just, the consumers has very different needs and they want to find out different things when you do that. So still more work to do on the tech front.
Yeah, a long way to go, but yeah, very exciting. Perhaps if we kind of shift the discussion onto some industry-wide topics. So we established early on that Awaze is the largest professional manager of vacation rentals in Europe. And perhaps this is a little bit controversial, but you could say that Awaze is kind of like the Vacasa of Europe, or the other way around, Vacasa is like the Awaze of
Not a great analogy, but
hear me out.
Sure, yeah.
So we've heard that, in the last couple of months, Vacasa has had some, quite a few problems. It's, it's slashed its workforce, it's dialed back its profitability guidance, it's seen higher than expected kind of homeowner churn, and its share price is now kind of trading at under $1 a share. And specific to the homeowner churn, on their last earnings call, the CEO said that this was an industry-wide problem. Do you agree with that? Is that a Vacasa problem or a short-term rental industry problem?
Well, Dennis grilled them pretty hard after that. Your colleagues, so they were put under pressure. I think they since corrected that industry comment, at least in the interview that was on Skift. We do the same type of thing that Vacasa does. So we're similar in that way in terms of focusing on people's second homes, largely a home and not a flat, and largely mostly for us in rural destinations. But I mean, our brands, like you take Host Seasons or some of the brands, have been around for almost 80 years, 50 years. We're profitable. We've been doing this for a long time. We have over 100,000 properties across Europe and the UK. So look, there's one element of similarity, and then there's a lot of differences in terms of, just how we do things and the financial results behind that. I would say that, on our side, we're very proud. We focus very hard on churn. We have teams in every country that we operate where we try to take care of the owner, do webinars, conferences, really speak to the owners. I mean, clearly what they want is they want to sell as much as possible, but they also want information around what is going on in the market, and that's something we're very proud to provide them with.
And has homeowner churn gone up for you guys?
No, homeowner churn is doing great. So we're very happy with our numbers on homeowner churn. We just had a meeting yesterday about in terms of where we are, and obviously a metric that you monitor very closely in this industry, because
yes.
You have death, divorce, divestment, potentially disappointment, the 4Ds. And so there's a risk that the homeowners feel that the grass is always greener. And so it's very important to be local with homeowners. Like, we have learned lots of lessons in terms of how to speak to them, and a homeowner, it's a semi-rational decision to rent out your holiday home. They want to get the money, but they love their property, right? So you have to sort of take care of it as such, and just like in the hospitality business, the personal relationships, it's hospitality, really matter.
I guess as we kind of enter a recessionary environment, I guess I was a bit surprised to hear about the homeowner churn, because you might expect that as kind of consumer wallets are squeezed, people might put their secondary home listed on kind of sites like Awaze or Vacasa. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the supply dynamics going on in your company right now? Do you kind of expect that to increase as we enter a recessionary environment?
Well, we are already seeing signs, and especially in markets like I'm from Sweden, which has like the craziest sort of personal debt level in the Western world, and where everybody's on a variable mortgage. And so we're certainly already seeing in the countries where you have more people on variable mortgages, like a much bigger interest in renting out. We're also starting to see trends of typically the homeowners are allowed to take homeowner weeks, but if you need the money to pay for the mortgage, you get fewer homeowner weeks in summer, and then we have more to rent out. So yeah, those trends are already apparent in our data.
Great. Kind of ticking off all the controversial questions early on.
What, you want to save some for the end? Or
I've got to get through them early on. That's what my producers told me. So, so last year there was some kind of press releases that the private equity owner of Awaze has been in kind of talks with investment banks to potentially sell the business, and I think the press release said it might be at the end of 2022, so that's obviously not happened. But as CEO, kind of what do you see as the exit opportunities for Awaze? Could an IPO be a possibility, or have you kind of been put off by how Vacasa is traded and like Sondra is traded?
Do you want to have the boring answer, or do you want to have a slightly more interesting answer?
The second one, yeah.
Second one, no. Well, so the boring answer is I'm focusing 100% of my time to delight owners and guests. And the owners will do what the owners will do. But the real answer is, look, I mean, we're very happy with where we are. We're very happy with what we have done in the company over the past 5 years since our sponsors took over. But we have lots left to do. And clearly right now, the financial markets are in a bit of turmoil. And so, there will be, we are private equity owned, so we will be at some point having new owners, that is clear. When that time is, I do not know. But we're in no rush. We have lots of things to do, so I kind of want to, I'll give you like a a little bit more interesting answer perhaps, but ultimately it's an owner question. And
an IPO?
At some point, that could be in the cards as well. I don't think that's the most logical next step for us. Again, it's an owner question. I think that there are elements in terms of how they think about this, which makes an outright sale more interesting.
Okay. Perhaps if we kind of talk about M&A and kind of the opportunity for further expansion. So vacation rentals is obviously, it's a very fragmented market, very fragmented industry, and Awaze has done a lot of M&A activity in the kind of last couple of years. Merilee, are you considering consolidation through M&A as well, or are you taking a slightly different approach?
Well, look, I think there's two different ways that we're going to see the market consolidate. And I think one of them is, the Awaze model, Sykes, Vacasa, where it's acquiring smaller property management companies and different brands and consolidating them under one company. But actually, if you look at it globally, even the combination of those major companies still represents a very small portion of the total overall market. I think there was a stat in Skift at one point that there's about 140,000 operators in short-term and vacation rentals around the world. That's huge, and I don't see that number consolidating into any small number to mirror what you see even in the hotel world. So I guess the real question is then, where and how will consolidation happen? Because it needs to. And I see that actually happening through technology. I think where you start to get technologies that are bringing together lots of entrepreneurial smaller businesses, you then start to get opportunities for cross-selling across those different portfolios. And one of the things that we've seen in our technology side, which is how we're placing our bets on growth and consolidation, is that even now you start to see countries trying to understand how they can get a grip of our industry. So there was a really good article that Skift did about our Hosperia deal in Oman, where we've actually done a deal with Visit Oman and the Ministry of Tourism, and that way they have one system that's able to aggregate data in the market. And of course, we're all about pushing out to every different platform. And that's really important because we want to make sure that the distribution channels that exist everywhere exist there too. But what it does is give the government that visibility, but it also then gives all the professional operators in that market the possibility to collaborate, to share leads, and do all of these things in an ecosystem that's driven by tech. And I think so much of the industry is unfortunately still working on spreadsheets, picking up the phone. I mean, you know, you go out to places like Cornwall and Devon or the Isle of Man or various different locations and you realize that actually a lot of these small businesses still run as family-owned businesses as if they were in the 1980s. And without technology helping them to take that leap forward, I think, you know, there are going to be missed opportunities. But the market is growing, M&A is going to happen, but I also think that technology can play a huge role in helping those entrepreneurs to keep their businesses, if that's what they want to do, and not all of them do. Some of them would much prefer to sell up to a bigger company. But the ones who want to maintain that they have the opportunity to grow, to modernize, and use technology to make their businesses more profitable.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because you touched a little bit on the kind of standardization and the regulation that's also occurring in the space, and you could potentially, you know, use tech to kind of regulate the market, which, like you said, is, you know, very fragmented and not as regulated as kind of other parts of the travel landscape. In terms of kind of M&A and the scope for consolidation, could kind of a consolidated Awaze, Vacasa, Under the Doormat, all these different kind of companies ever be a meaningful competitor to kind of like a giant like Airbnb? It's still very fragmented, but could that ever be on the cards?
I think, look, my position is on the demand side, you compete with everybody. You compete with Airbnb, with Expedia, with Booking. We work with Airbnb, with
Yes.
Booking, with Expedia, and we work with Google. I know they're in the room as well. But you compete for like, how do I get them to my site? Typing direct type in, or it's more on the supply side where you know, so we have differentiation and we have, you know, over 70% of our traffic is direct. So we're very proud of that. But on the supply side, I think that's where you know, you have even more of a differentiation of the model. So like, what do we offer homeowners? And you know, I don't think Airbnb is going to want to do cleaning on the west coast of Denmark. It's not their sweet spot. But that's something we really know how to do. And so I think, you know, you sort of have to look at both demand and supply dynamics when you do it. And I think there's a clear category for the managed category where it will remain very separate. And homeowners who have a second home, I don't know if you want to discuss with guests 14 emails of how many pets they can bring to the house. We'll do that for you. And do you really want to be on top of pricing? We'll do that for you. So I think from that perspective, there's a clear line of differentiation. I think that, you know, some of these models you could see, you could make a case for like there will be, I agree with, more consolidation on the managed side. But do I think our category is as big as, let's say, Expedia, which does, you know, everything else in travel? Probably not, but it's certainly big enough.
Yeah, and I'd go a bit further. I don't think that platforms want to diversify out of being platforms. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Some of it regulatory, because, you know, the second that they're not just a platform, then they're in a whole different regulatory world, which if you're a global platform, you don't want to do. So I actually sort of, you know, you see the OTAs and the property management companies almost as frenemies. You know, for us, it's a great channel of distribution. You only pay for a customer to acquire a customer when you actually get a customer. So, you know, compared to Google, AdWords, and other things, you know exactly what your ROI is. And as the CEO of Accor said a couple of years ago, the key is making sure that you never pay twice for the same customer. And that's up to you as a company to make sure that you've got the right brand, the right loyalty, and all those things that once you've paid to acquire that customer, they come back to you. But I think there is a very important place for the OTAs, and I don't think we're going to see that the OTAs are ever going to be direct competition Of course, on the demand side, you're always trying to do your own direct bookings. But at the end of the day, I think the OTAs will still be here in 5 years' time, and I don't think they're going to start acquiring companies in our sector. Equally, I don't think we're going to become OTAs.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, and look, we will channel manage. Like I basically look at it, I have a revenue management team just like a hotel would.
Yes.
And so some properties I keep to myself, and and then we sort of open and shut just like a channel manager would do at an airline or in a hotel chain.
So we've got kind of a few minutes left, and I think a good way to conclude would be to talking about AI, the hottest topic of the day, really. And I know, Henrik, you have some very interesting kind of opinions on this. Could you perhaps just give an overview of how you think AI could have the potential to really disrupt the travel landscape, just like perhaps what Google did a few years ago?
So again,
I know that's a really
no, but I've been here a long time. Like I was in travel before Google was in travel, right? It's how old I am. And but basically, I sent an email to my team this last weekend where I sort of called it like me Tarzan, you Jane. If you go in the old Tarzan movies, you had like Johnny Weissmuller, who was like me Tarzan, you Jane, speaking a very sort of not very grammatically advanced language. That's how we have been conditioned to search. Cheap hotel Barcelona, vacation rental seaside, right? So we've basically dumbed down ourselves to sort of try to get something out of Google or the big platforms to give us the right answer back. As the Booking CTO said, I think, because you tried that with the ChatGPT-4 or Bard at Google, where you write a long sentence of exactly what you would like to do based on your previous reviews in Venice or for a hotel or vacation rental. And so I completely agree with the Booking CTO in terms of like, you may not need the page anymore. And so travel will be, I think, has been fundamentally transformed by Google over the past 20 years. I think we're entering in as exciting and it'll be challenging phase for the next phase, because I think it will fundamentally change how we search. I think we will be conditioned to search differently. Today everybody goes like, oh, we'll never do that. I'll never write a long sentence, but you would if you get the right answer. You absolutely would if you get the right answer. And you don't have to click on 18 links to sort of get what you want. So I think it'll be completely transformative.
And who will be the winner from this kind of thing? Will it be short-term rentals? Because you might on ChatGPT write something like, I would like a 2-bedroom apartment with ocean views, and that might kind of skew more to vacation rentals, whilst hotels could just be called Hilton New York.
I think it'll go towards the ones who have control of the inventory, and the ones who have great brands where you have good customer interactions from before. And on both of those counts, I feel very good about where we are.
Great. So yeah, just got a kind of half a minute left. Question from the audience. So where do you think the consolidation of properties happen quickest, and why?
I think consolidation of properties happen where there are good brands. I think one of the things that we will see in our sector, and we can look to the hotel industry and what happened over a period of years there, is that consumers want that trust in a brand. And our sector to date only has a few brands that have emerged. And I think we're going to see more of that. But I think what we're going to also see is brands emerging in different categories. So again, just like hotels, you're going to have luxury brands. Yep. You're going to have budget brands. And I think that's going to be really important because, again, the OTAs, you can argue, have a brand, but they have inventory of all different types. It doesn't actually help the consumer to choose a brand that fits their needs. And I think we're going to see more consolidation emerging by the consolidation and the emergence of brands. And I think, again, it's going to be a combination of technology consolidation and the emergence of things like franchise brands and other things that, again, we can look to the hotel industry and learn from, as well as the acquisition route, where you see more and more smaller companies getting gobbled up, so to speak, from the bigger boys. And those owners seeing that often as a positive thing, because for them, it's about how much money are they making from their property. So I think on both sides, we're going to see more of it.
So look, sorry, I feel like I could talk about this all day with both of you, but it's been a really fascinating discussion, really insightful, and yeah, I hope you all got as much out of it as
So
I
no
did.
last curveball question for me and Merilee. That's it.
Maybe later, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for attending. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.